The city of Taros buzzed with noise, ships flying overhead, machines humming, and vendors shouting about fresh supplies. But in the middle of it all, no one noticed the thin, quiet figure walking slowly past the repair shops and merchant stalls. Her name was Zarella. She wore an old brown cloak with patches on every side. Her pale blue skin was covered in dust. Her hands were rough from work, but no one cared to see that. Everyone in the district knew who she was, the widow of an alien miner who died during a tunnel collapse a few years ago. And in this city, being a widow was almost a curse. Many believed her bad luck had caused the accident. Others thought she was too old, too poor, or simply useless. No one wanted her around. No one gave her a chance. Zarella had walked for hours that morning, moving from one workshop to another, asking for work. "Just cleaning? I'll do anything," she said softly. But every answer was the same. "Go away. No space for you. Not hiring." At one stall, a vendor threw a cloth at her feet. "You scare my customers," he snapped. "Don't come back." Zarella didn't say anything. She picked up the cloth, dusted off her hands, and walked away quietly. Her stomach hurt. She hadn't eaten since the evening before, when she had managed to buy a small piece of bread. She stopped near the edge of the market district and sat down by a wall. Ships flew above and no one paid attention to her. Her eyes looked down at her hands. Once these hands had held tools, fixed engines, and built machines beside her husband. Once she was respected. But now, "Excuse me," a voice said. Zarella looked up. A tall human stood in front of her. He wore a tool belt and a faded work jacket. His face was calm, eyes kind but sharp. She didn't recognize him. "You dropped this," he said, handing her the small cloth the vendor had thrown earlier. Zarella slowly took it, unsure what to say. "I saw what happened back there," the man said, nodding toward the vendor's stall. Zarella lowered her gaze. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," he replied. He did. She looked up again, surprised by his tone. "My name's Caleb," he said. "I run a small repair shop 2 blocks from here." "Not much, but it keeps me busy." Zarella nodded slowly. "I could use help. It's just sweeping, organizing tools, and maybe cleaning engine parts. I can't pay much, but I can offer food and a safe place to work," Caleb added. Zarella stared at him. No one had offered her work in years. Was this a trick? A test? "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because you look like someone who needs a chance," Caleb replied. Zarella hesitated. She looked at her tired hands, then at him. Finally, she nodded once. Caleb smiled. "Come by in the morning, look for the workshop with a red panel door, just knock." And then he walked away, blending back into the busy crowd. That night, Zarella slept on a bench under a small roof. It was cold, but she felt something warm inside her. A strange feeling she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next morning, she found the red panel door just like he said. It was a small workshop with parts stacked high, a few broken hover bikes outside, and the smell of oil in the air. She knocked. Caleb opened the door and stepped aside. "Glad you came." He showed her where to sweep, how to sort small tools by size, and how to wipe engine parts with care. Zarella worked quietly but quickly. Her hands moved with experience. Caleb noticed, but didn't say anything. Later, he handed her a warm container of food, soft grain cakes and broth. She almost cried. "You okay?" he asked. Zarella nodded, blinking fast. "Yes, thank you." For the rest of the day, she worked with care and focus. Caleb watched from time to time and smiled quietly. He didn't treat her like a burden. He didn't stare at her scars or her tired eyes. He just treated her like someone who mattered. As the sun set, Zarella looked at her hands again. They were still rough and dusty, but now they were busy, useful. That night, she didn't sleep on the bench. Caleb gave her a corner inside the workshop, a blanket and a pillow. It wasn't much, but to Zarella it felt like the beginning of something new. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. The workshop had no fancy lights or flying signs. It was small, dusty, and smelled like oil and metal. But to Zarella, it felt like a safe place. The red door no longer looked strange. It looked like a door to her new life. Every morning she arrived early, even before the sky turned bright. She cleaned the floor, wiped the counters, sorted the tools, and prepared the space for the day. Her hands, once weak from hunger, had started to grow steady and strong again. Caleb, the human mechanic, didn't say much. But every time she finished a task, he nodded in approval. One day, while Zarella was polishing a small engine part, Caleb handed her a fresh piece of bread with fruit paste. "You've been doing good work," he said. Zarella took it carefully. "Thank you, I'm grateful." Caleb smiled. "You ever worked on engines before?" Zarella looked at the part in her hand. "Yes, years ago. My husband and we fixed mining drills and cargo loaders." "Thought so," Caleb said. "You move like someone who knows machines." Zarella gave a small smile. It felt strange but good to be noticed for something other than being a widow. That afternoon, a customer came in, a grumpy trader with a damaged hover cart. "This thing keeps pulling to the left," he complained. Caleb checked it out. "Axle's warped. Could use a new stabilizer too." Zarella stood nearby, quiet. She looked at the wheels for a moment, then gently spoke. "The rear magnets are misaligned. It's not just the axle." The trader raised an eyebrow. "And who are you?" Caleb replied before she could. "She works here. She's good." The trader looked doubtful but allowed the repair. Zarella helped Caleb take apart the hover cart. She worked fast, her hands steady, her knowledge sharp. In less than an hour it was fixed and ran smoother than ever. The trader, surprised, handed over extra credits. "Didn't expect that from, well, her," he mumbled. Caleb narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Zarella didn't show anger. She was used to comments like that. But deep inside something began to change. She had done good work. She had been paid for her skills. That mattered more than the words. Over the next week, more customers came. Some raised their eyebrows at seeing an alien widow in the shop. A few whispered. One even said, "Didn't no humans hire ghosts now?" Caleb looked the man in the eye and replied, "She works harder than anyone I've hired before. If that's a problem, you can leave." The man blinked, then left in silence. Zarella overheard it from behind a shelf. Her eyes stung with emotion. No one had ever defended her like that. Later that evening, when the shop was quiet and the sky turned golden, Zarella sat on a bench outside. Caleb came out and leaned against the wall. "You okay?" he asked. Zarella nodded slowly. "I don't understand you." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You're kind," she said. "You don't treat me like trash, even when others complain." Caleb thought for a moment. "My people, we know what it's like to be treated badly just for being different. A few generations ago, humans weren't welcome in this galaxy, either." Zarella looked at him. "But you didn't give up." "Nope. We fought, worked, earned our place," Caleb replied. "Same as you're doing." Zarella stayed quiet for a while, then asked, "Why do you care?" "Because no one should lose everything and then be forgotten," Caleb said. "That's not right." Zarella looked down at her hands again. This time she didn't see weakness. She saw strength returning. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Two young alien girls peeked into the workshop. They stared at Zarella, whispering to each other. She noticed but said nothing. One of them finally asked, "Are you the widow who fixes machines?" Zarella blinked. "Yes." "You're not cursed?" Zarella shook her head. "No." The girls giggled and ran off, but Zarella could hear the joy in their voices. Something was changing. At the end of the week, Caleb handed her a pouch with credits. "What's this?" she asked. "Your pay," he said. "You've earned it." Zarella stared at the pouch. Her fingers shook as she took it. She hadn't held her own earnings in years. "Thank you," she whispered. Caleb gave her a nod. "You deserve it." That Night. Zarella went to a small food stall she once feared to approach. This time she stood straight, paid for a warm meal, and sat down like anyone else. Some people stared, but she didn't care. She had a job. She had dignity. She had hope. And it all began because one human didn't look away. Morning light poured into the small workshop as tools clinked and engines hummed. For most people in the market district, it was just another day. But for Zarella, every sunrise now felt like a second chance. Her hands, once weak and trembling, now worked fast and steady. She wiped engine parts, adjusted circuits, and handled toolkits like a professional. Even her eyes had changed, brighter, more focused, like a person who finally believed in herself again. Caleb, the human mechanic, had noticed it too. "You handle that gear pump better than I do," he joked one morning, as she tightened the final bolts on a ground loader. Zarella gave a small smile. "I did these a lot in the mines. I still remember the sound they make when something's off." Caleb tapped the machine twice. "Sounds perfect now." Zarella wiped her hands and looked around the workshop. She had rearranged most of it to be more efficient, hanging tools on the wall, labeling repair parts, and even building a small shelf for new designs. Customers had started noticing too. One day, a trader from a distant colony brought in a broken, dual-core hover engine. 2 other mechanics had failed to fix it. Caleb looked at it, then turned to Zarella. "Ever worked with one of these?" Zarella nodded. "Yes, but not in years. I'll try." The 2 of them spent hours opening the engine, checking every wire and magnet coil. It was complex. One wrong move and it would overheat. But Zarella moved with skill and confidence. She explained to Caleb how the alien circuits needed to be grounded differently when paired with human tech. Together, they finished the repair. The engine purred like it was new. The trader was shocked. "You fixed it? I thought it was scrap." Caleb nodded. "She figured it out." The trader looked at Zarella with respect. "You're an engineer?" Zarella looked down at her hands. "I used to be, I guess. I still am." That night, Caleb brought out a small box and placed it on the workbench. "What's this?" Zarella asked. "Something I made," Caleb said. "It's a nameplate, says Zarella, engineer. You've earned it." Zarella stared at it for a long moment. Then she picked it up, hands trembling, not with fear, but with emotion. She gently placed it on the wall beside Caleb's own nameplate. For the first time in many years, her title had returned. Not just a widow, not just a helper, an engineer. As weeks passed, more and more customers came to the workshop, some even asking for Zarella by name. A few were still unsure about working with an alien widow, but most left happy with her work. One customer, a young alien mother, said, "My daughter wants to be a mechanic too." She said, "If Zarella can do it, so can I." Zarella felt her heart lift. One evening after a long day of fixing transport carts, Zarella and Caleb sat outside the workshop watching ships fly overhead. "You ever think about opening your own shop?" Caleb asked. Zarella shook her head. "I don't need that, I just wanted to be useful again." Caleb nodded. "Well, you've done more than that. You've helped me grow this place. I'd be lost without you." Zarella gave a soft laugh. "You're not so bad with tools either." They both smiled, but their peaceful moment didn't last long. The next day, as Zarella stepped outside to buy a few parts from the nearby vendor, she heard a voice behind her. "Zarella." She turned. A group of aliens from her home district stood across the path. Leading them was Tharn, her late husband's older brother. His eyes were sharp and his voice cold. "You're still alive," he said. "And working here? With a human?" Zarella stayed calm. "Yes, I'm not begging anymore. I work, I fix machines." Tharn frowned. "You're an embarrassment. Our people avoid this place because of you. You've forgotten your place." "My place?" Zarella asked. "Is that where I starve in silence? Is that what you want?" Tharn stepped closer. "Come back to the district. Stop ruining what little name our family has." Before Zarella could answer, Caleb appeared behind her. "Problem here?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Tharn narrowed his eyes. This is family. Business human. No, Zarella said firmly. It's my business, and I decide where I belong. Caleb looked at her, then nodded slowly. Tharn stared at her for a few seconds, then turned away. The others followed. Zarella's hand shook, but she didn't cry. She had stood her ground. Later that night, Caleb found her cleaning tools alone. You okay? He asked. Zarella nodded. I think so. He handed her a cup of warm tea. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Zarella looked at the tool in her hand, then at the engine in the corner. I'm not trying to prove. I'm just building again. The next day, the workshop opened as usual. Zarella wore a clean apron, her tools at her side. A small alien girl walked in, holding her father's hand. Is this the shop of the lady engineer? The girl asked. Zarella knelt down and smiled. Yes, it is, the girl grinned. I want to fix ships like you someday. Zarella's smile grew wider. Then you must learn with care and work with your heart. Behind her, the workshop buzzed with energy and life. Zarella had found more than work. She had found respect. She had found her place. The sun was setting behind the tall metal buildings of the market district. Orange light touched the edges of the workshop as machines cooled and tools went silent for the evening. Zarella wiped her hands on her apron and stretched her tired arms. It had been a long, busy day. 2 hover carts, a farming drone, and a broken water pump had passed through the shop, and every job had been done well. Inside, Caleb was counting parts. He looked up and said, Another good day, Zarella. She nodded. The pump was tricky, but we did it. He grinned. You did most of it. She allowed herself a smile. But peace didn't last long. Just before they locked the doors for the night, someone knocked. 3 hard, sharp taps. Zarella looked toward the entrance, her shoulders tensed. I'll check, she said. Caleb gave her a glance, then nodded. Zarella opened the red panel door. Standing outside were Tharn, her late husband's brother, and 3 others from her old district. All wore long coats with dark markings, symbols of authority among their people. Tharn's face was stern. We warned you. Zarella kept her voice steady. You have no right to come here. You shame our name, you bring disgrace, Tharn said firmly. You were given silence and shelter. You chose noise and filth. I chose life. She answered. One of the others, a heavy-set alien with gray eyes, stepped forward. We came to take you back. This shop is not your home. Before Zarella could reply, Caleb's voice came from behind. She's not going anywhere. The men turned to see Caleb standing with a wrench in hand, not raised, just resting on his shoulder. His voice was calm but strong. She works here. This is her place now, he said. Tharn scoffed. You think you can protect her? I don't need protection, Zarella said. Her voice was louder now. I've survived more than any of you will ever understand. The air grew tense. She has her name back, Caleb added. Her skills, her pride, and she earned it. Tharn stepped closer. Then let her prove herself. Alone. Zarella stared at him. What do you mean? There's a factory outside the district, Tharn explained. One of our transport drones is failing. It's been untouched for years. Fix it alone in one day, then we'll know you haven't become soft under a human's roof. Zarella understood it wasn't a challenge. It was a trap. They wanted her to fail. They wanted her to give up and return in shame. She looked at Caleb. You don't have to do this, he whispered. But Zarella shook her head. No, I do. The next morning, she packed a small toolkit and walked to the edge of the city, where the old factory stood. Broken fences, rusted walls, and cracked ground surrounded it. Inside, a large transport drone sat dead in the middle of a silent loading bay. It was a massive machine, twice her height, with broken stabilizers, tangled wiring, and a frozen engine core. Zarella took a deep breath. Then she got to work. Hours passed. She opened every panel, checked every wire, replaced melted cores, and adjusted the control panels. The air was hot. Her hands got cut. Oil stained her clothes. But she didn't stop. She remembered the teachings of her husband. She remembered the human who believed in her. And she remembered the little girl who said, "I want to fix ships like you." By nightfall, the drone's engine roared back to life. It hovered in the air, smooth and steady. Zarella stepped back, tired but proud. Just then, Tharn and his group arrived. They looked at the working drone with disbelief. "You didn't cheat?" one asked. Zarella looked him straight in the eye. "No. I earned this." Tharn didn't speak for a long moment. Finally, he turned away and said, "Do what you want." The others followed him, silent. Zarella didn't watch them go. She looked at her hands again. Dirty, bruised, and full of strength. That night, she returned to the workshop. Caleb was waiting outside. When she appeared, he smiled wide. "You did it," she nodded. "The drone flies again?" "I knew you would," he said. She gave a tired laugh. "You always believe, don't you? Only in the ones who deserve it." The next morning, word spread quickly, not just about the repair, but about Zarella, the widow who faced her past, the engineer who proved herself again. People from different districts came just to see the shop. Some came for repairs. Others came for advice, and a few just came to meet her. Zarella didn't seek praise. She just kept working, hands moving, tools clinking, heart steady. She had faced fear, judgment, and doubt. Now she stood with pride. Not because someone saved her, but because she stood tall on her own. The days grew brighter for the small workshop with the red panel door. What once stood as a quiet corner on the edge of the market district now hummed with activity. Machines lined up outside, and customers, both human and alien, stood waiting, their turn. Inside, Zarella worked with calm hands and a focused mind. Her tools moved with grace. Her eyes scanned parts quickly. She no longer doubted herself. The workshop had changed her, but not just because of the work. It was the respect, the kindness, and the belief that grew within these walls. Caleb, her human partner, had made space for her. Now she filled it with purpose. One morning, Zarella was adjusting a heavy cargo drone when a small hand tugged at her apron. She turned and saw the same little alien girl who had once said, "I want to fix ships like you." This time, the girl was holding a small broken toy ship. "It doesn't fly anymore," the girl said sadly. Zarella knelt beside her and smiled. "Then let's fix it together." They opened the toy on the floor while Caleb chuckled from the back. "Starting your own team, huh?" "Maybe," Zarella replied, her voice warm. As the girl watched closely, Zarella explained every step, what each part did, how to connect the wires, how to test balance. In just a few minutes, the small ship floated in the air again. The girl's eyes lit up. "I want to be like you," Zarella nodded softly. "Then keep learning, one bolt at a time." Later that week, a merchant from another planet arrived with an offer. He had heard of the workshop's skill and wanted to hire them to design hybrid machines that used both human and alien tech. Caleb looked at the schematics and whistled. "That's a big project." Zarella studied the design carefully. "We can do it, but we'll need time," the merchant smiled. "Time is fine, quality is what matters." And just like that, they had their first contract that would go beyond the district. Zarella and Caleb spent nights drawing diagrams, adjusting circuits, and testing prototypes. They worked side by side, sharing ideas, solving problems, and sometimes even arguing over tiny details. But it was always teamwork. Each finished model brought more attention, and slowly the people who once looked down on Zarella started to look up to her. One morning, as Zarella entered the shop, she noticed a small gift box on her work table. Inside was a new set of tools, engraved with her name. She looked around and found Caleb sipping tea. "You did this?" she asked. He nodded. "A proper engineer deserves proper tools." She held the tools carefully. "They're perfect. And so are you." he added with a smile. For this place, for this work, for everything. Zarella looked away shyly. Compliments still felt new, but deep inside, she felt warmth, a kind of joy that comes when life finally begins to make sense again. Soon the workshop began receiving visits from young apprentices, boys and girls from nearby districts who wanted to learn. Zarella organized a corner of the shop for training. She didn't speak loudly, but every word she said was clear, honest, and full of experience. She showed them not just how to fix machines, but how to stay strong when life gets hard, how to believe in their own hands, how to never let shame break their spirit. One evening, as she walked home from the shop, she passed the same food stall that once threw her away. This time, the vendor smiled. "Zarella!" he called out. "Good work today. That hover cart repair saved my delivery." She paused. He offered her a cup of warm broth. "On the house." Zarella hesitated for just a second, then took it, not out of hunger, but out of peace. Time passed, and one day a news crew came to the workshop. They had heard about the alien widow who rebuilt her life alongside a human. Cameras flashed as reporters asked questions. "How did you do it?" one asked. "What message do you have for others like you?" another said. Zarella stood beside Caleb, thinking quietly before speaking. "I was not rescued," she said slowly. "I was given a chance. One small chance. And with it, I found dignity. Not by begging, but by working, by believing that I still mattered." The reporter nodded. "And the human?" Zarella smiled gently. "He didn't fix my life. He reminded me I still had the tools to fix it myself." Caleb, standing beside her, said nothing. He simply nodded, with quiet pride. That evening, the two sat outside the workshop once again. The stars sparkled above the rooftops and the sounds of the city faded into the distance. "Did you ever think it would come to this?" Caleb asked. Zarella leaned back in her chair. "No, not in my wildest thoughts. I thought my life ended when I lost everything. And now?" Zarella looked at the workshop. "Now I've built something new. Not just machines, but purpose. And maybe even happiness." Caleb looked over at her. "You deserve that." She looked at him too, her eyes soft. "So do you." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. As the night deepened, lights inside the shop slowly dimmed. The red panel door stayed open, because the workshop wasn't just a place for machines anymore, it was a home for hope.